record. Oh, geez. Get situated. Put my microphone down a little bit more. Sure, good enough. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Unraveling the Pattern. Let's talk about my review for episode 302. This is Unraveling the Pattern. I'm Lauren. Welcome. Check the description for the spoilers, and let's jump right in. First, the good. I'm just going to run down my list, so I apologize if I'm looking over to the side, but I've got a long list of good, so I'm just going to run down this really quick. So let's get to it. First of all, I love that we learn more about Andor and Queen Morghese. And the succession and how that was introduced was really fascinating, a great cold open idea. This episode definitely was a slower pace than episode 301, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed how much lore we learned. This was definitely an Andor-focused episode. We learned a lot more about Elaine and her backstory, her mother, her brothers, even Gabriel, and we learned about Elida. All of that is very intriguing to me and is clearly setting up some important things for later. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I enjoyed this episode as much as the first episode, but it was a really good episode with a lot of great things in it. I found it really interesting how people reacted to Lord Gabriel. There were some people who it was almost like they didn't know who he was, and then they kind of realized who he was once he entered the room. I thought that was a fun little detail and Easter egg for later. I won't explain more of that to people who might be watching this who haven't read the books, but anyway, I thought that was kind of a cool idea. Just in general, Elaine's relationship with Gawain and Galad, all of those things really stood out to me as pretty book accurate. I'm not totally clear on whether or not Galad is her true brother or not. Like in the books, he's her half brother. It's going to be interesting to find out if that's what's going on there. It seems like maybe they've simplified it, or they just, milk before meat. They don't want to feed us everything. They want to spoon feed us a little bit at a time. Maybe we'll learn more about that as the show progresses. I loved seeing Matt laying down and having the Aes Sedai healing him. That was a really big surprise to me, and that was exciting. But I'll talk a little bit about what disappointed me about that scene in later in the review. But seeing Rima Sedai back, I guess she was rescued from the Shan-Chan. That was very exciting. I was glad to see that. Some big things with Rand's plotline that excited me was seeing him training with Lan. It still wasn't as much as I was hoping for. I was hoping for, the flame and the void discussion and different things of that nature, but we're getting some of that, and I hope we get more. But that was really fun. But I think the most exciting part of that whole dynamic was Aviendha and her disdain for swords and kind of understanding that she understands the prophecies. She understands it's her duty to get Rand to the Aiel Waste. I thought that was all really well handled. The side plot with Egwene and Lanfear, that stuff was scary, interesting, and a really fun reveal, but also just awful when you realize that Lanfear is juggling these dreams with Rand where she's all loving and seems very close. And at the same time, she's torturing Egwene. It just makes you really realize just how psychotic Lanfear is, and it's kind of terrifying. But to be honest, I kind of like that. I don't want to like Lanfear in the sense that I think Rand should end up with her. I don't think he should end up with her, but I do like her as a character. I think she's really intriguing. She's very smart, and that all is very fun for me. But just terrible what she's doing to Egwene. The fact that she's got these bruises on her neck, and that's coming from her dreams, that's scary stuff. Whenever there's prophecy, I get excited. And I didn't mention this in my episode 1 review, but I love it when they mention prophecy. I also absolutely love that Aviendha knows the prophecies. I saw someone complaining that Aviendha wouldn't know that much of the Aiel prophecies, and I'm like, yeah, she would. Like, that's all they talk about is the Karakarn and the purpose of the Aiel. Sure, they don't talk about what happens in Ruidion, but they absolutely talk about the prophecies. Also, this is a TV show. They have to streamline some of that stuff. Who else are you going to have deliver that important exposition? It's got to be Aviendha. So that's just a silly complaint to me. But anyway, other things that I really liked about this episode is that they fixed the Waygate. I'll talk more about that a bit later. But Loial talked about the longing, the way that Bane and Chiad interact with Perrin and Loial and with the people of the Two Rivers. I just really like that dynamic a lot. One of my favorite beats with Perrin's story arc was as they looked over and Loial talked about Manetheren being this great city and having this great army. And then Perrin like, no, we're just shepherds and farmers. And I loved how Chiad turned to him like, oh yeah, if you say so, like I've seen you fight. I thought that was really cool. Again, they're just trying to fit in these little nuggets as they can without being heavy-handed with the exposition. I think they're doing a good job. I don't know how much of this will translate to non-book readers, but to me, it's lovely to hear these kinds of things. Marin Alvear recast, that was a really great surprise. I thought she was great as Marin Alvear, Egwene's mother, and sort of the head of the women's circle, I assume. I'll be honest, I thought she was a better actress than the original Marin Alvear from season one. No hate on her, but I'm just glad that this woman has been recast as Marin Alvear. She seems to bring a lot of depth to that character, which I'm really happy to see. Interesting to me that Marin Alvear mentioned Tam, Abel, and Bran, but we haven't seen them yet. I wonder if they're going to make an appearance. I really hope so. Another thing I'm curious about is Perrin mentioned a man and a woman who passed through the Waygate and that they smelled wrong. And I really hope that he's talking about Lord Luke. But who's the woman who smells wrong? Is that Fail? Because if so, does she smell wrong as well? I don't know. That's kind of an interesting idea. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what he was talking about there. Of course, I don't want to get too spoilery, but maybe he assumed there were two people because Lord Luke, right? So something that really excited me was the Congers and the Coplins mention. That's just fun to hear. Again, that's one of those little nuggets for book fans, but that excited me. Some of my other favorite dynamics were Galad, Gawain, and Matt. That stuff was really funny. I love the kind of setup for that. Of course, it was a bit disappointing that we didn't get the classic iconic fight in this episode, but I have to assume it's coming. I mean, they're setting it up, right? So that was really fun to see. It was really surprising to me to hear mention of Tigraine, the previous daughter heir. That was exciting. Just a lot of mentions. Those things always get me excited. And one of the last highlights or things that I just really liked about this episode was Rand talking about the One Power. I'm just going to read what he said. He said, "I'm dying of thirst, and there it is, a pond right in front of me, and the water tastes like life itself." I really liked that description. I thought that sounded like something that came right out of the books. I haven't researched if it did, but all right, let's now move on to the bad and the confusing. I'll be honest, as a book fan, I was disappointed that they literally had this scene of Matt sitting on this bed with Aes Sedai there to heal him, and there was no mention of the dagger. Where is the Shatter Logoth dagger? To me, they could have easily thrown that in. They could have had him yelling in the old tongue at the Aes Sedai. There's so many things they could have done with that scene that I would have liked to see, and they didn't. They just kept it kind of low keel and turned it into, well, we can't heal mental health issues. And that was it. And that was disappointing to me. While I liked seeing that scene and seeing Rima Sedai there, I was very disappointed that we didn't get a more book accurate Matt healing scene. Even if they had just mentioned the dagger, or if they had had him yelling in the old tongue, I would have been much happier, but it is what it is. I talked about the Waygate a bit. I love the Waygate. I want to talk more about that in my next section, but I was also extremely disappointed that they couldn't have just gotten it right from the start. And that's why I put that in this section, because it's so confusing. It's going to be confusing for non-book readers. I know Loyal makes some offhanded comment like, this is how Ogier do it. And then, he says something like, Dark Friends don't use Ogier. They just use the ways on their own. But to me, that's just very unsatisfying. And I wish that they had been a little bit more clear earlier on, but what can we do? At some point in the episode, there was a mention that the One Power can't bring anyone back from the dead, wink, wink. And that bothered me because, yeah, that's true. The One Power cannot bring someone back from the dead, but it rang hollow to me because it kind of happened in season one in the finale. Now I know Nynaeve wasn't technically dead, but a lot of non-book readers don't understand that nuance. And that was just a very confusing scene. And it still bothers me that the show is kind of trying to change some of the things they kind of accidentally set up previously. It just feels very clumsy and rings a bit hollow to me. These are all minor nitpicks. As always, I love the show more than I hate the show. I don't ever hate the show. I just dislike some things or I'm disappointed in things. Mostly my disappointments are, I wish more of things from the books was included, that kind of thing. I will just say, though, that the Lan thing between Rand, as exciting as it was to see Lan and Rand practicing with a sword, it wasn't enough for me. Again, this is just a tiny nitpick, and I'm hopeful that we'll see more, but I want more. I need more. As always, my main complaint is we just need more episodes. We need more time. We need more budget to flesh out these characters and these concepts and really bring Robert Jordan's world to life. And I understand that's not realistic, and in some ways, having these limitations is good for creativity, but it's always kind of like what might have been. I'm always thinking about what might have been if we just had unlimited budgets or Rings of Power budgets or whatever. Anyway, I've harped on that enough. One scene that I talked in my previous review that I kind of like the body horror elements of the show, but the scene of Rhenna bleeding into Egwene's mouth, I did not like that. That creeped me out. That was gross. Honestly, the things that give me the most mixed feelings about this episode are the things between Lanfear and Rand. I've already kind of talked about this, but it kind of makes me uncomfortable that Rand is kind of willingly hanging out with Lanfear in dreams, or so it appears. I don't like that idea. So I'm hoping that they'll resolve this more. And I know some people probably thought this was a funny gag. To me, it was too over the top with Matt hearing the princes in the other rooms. I don't know. That made me uncomfortable, but I understand why they did it. To me, that was done for laughs and it kind of worked. I hope you remember that I really don't dislike the show. I'm just making lists and I'm running through my lists and just talking about the things that I was either disappointed in or excited about. And so this is how my reviews work. All right, let's move on to the great and the surprising. I've already talked about this a lot, but the Waygate, it was great seeing the Waygate more or less properly working as I hoped it would. Now, it's still not the way it's described in the books, but it's definitely an upgrade from how it was used in the past. I love seeing the little Waygate key, and I love seeing the sort of like branches and leaves coming together to form the gate. That was really, really cool. Please, more of that. That's what I wanted to see from the start. And as I already mentioned, it's a shame they didn't do it sooner, but better late than never. Another thing that was really great was what Avienda said. She said, "Our Karakarn is creation and destruction wrapped in one. Balance." It's great to me because I love it when the show talks about balance, because that's one of the big themes of the books, and I want the show to harp on balance more. I'll say the two standout things from this episode that had me the most excited were Perrin's homecoming, the music, the epic vistas. It all just felt really amazing. What's incredible to me is we've barely spent any time in the Two Rivers in the show, and it still feels like a homecoming when he comes home. It feels like I'm going home. And that might be because I'm a book reader, and so I'm so excited and I know what's coming, but it really felt nostalgic and wonderful to me. And then the second thing that really stood out to me that I just absolutely loved about this episode was Matt and Swan interacting together. I loved that Swan was using fish metaphors. I loved that Swan talked about her Uncle Huon. That really resonated with me. And I also love Matt's sort of change. Matt presents himself a certain way in the books that's really hard to capture, and I feel like they're nailing it in the show. He presents himself as sort of confident and cocky and like he doesn't care, but deep down he cares a lot. And I think they've really nailed that. Donal Finn is doing a fantastic job. And so there's something about his interactions with Swan where she kind of convinces him to take the horn and everything. I don't know, that really worked for me and was funny. It was endearing. It just really worked for me. This is a minor thing, but I love that Matt actually said, "I'm no hero." I wanted to hear him say that, so it was really great to hear that. And the ending of the episode hit me really hard. The way that Bear just quoted prophecy right at the end, that really resonated with me. I love how that episode ended. All in all, this was weaker than the first episode, but I probably give this episode a 7.5 out of 10. Not bad. A lot of exposition, especially about Andor. And I'm not a big fan of the Andoran story plots in the books personally, but I think the show has done a fantastic job of bringing all these characters to life. I'm very excited to learn more about Elida in particular because they've cast such a wonderful actress to play Elida. I want to see her shine as Elida, so it'll be interesting to see all that. And there's obviously some very intriguing things going on with Lord Gabriel. They did mention Gareth Brine, as they called him. I always called him Gareth Bryn. I'm rambling again. This is what I do in these reviews. I hope that you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking. Thanks for commenting and being respectful. Thank you to my supporters here on YouTube and on Patreon. I couldn't do this without you. Please consider supporting me like these people. And until next time, let the dragon ride again on the winds of Prime.